We're back with another exciting episode. We hope you're loving our content, and there's plenty more to come. Subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay notified about new episodes. Now let's dive into the podcast. Enjoy.
Social media rise of Andrew Tate.
Right, and it frames it all through this lens of, like, strategy and tactics, almost like looking at a military plan or a power play.
Exactly. So our mission today is to really unpack the specific methods and approaches described in the source material we have.
Yeah, we're talking about these strategic choices the source says were made across different platforms, the content tactics used, how engagement and virality were supposedly engineered.
How that distinctive personal brand was built, the techniques for handling criticism, and importantly, how influence was monetized again, all based only on what this document lays out.
And the source also touches on the potential downsides, right? The double-edged sword, as it calls it, of this kind of digital fame. But again, strictly drawing from this material.
Okay, let's get into it. Let's unpack the insights from this deep dive source.
All right, so the document, it kicks things off by framing platform selection. No, it's not just picking where to post.
It's more strategic.
Yeah, exactly. Like choosing a battlefield is how the source puts it. The core idea, it says, is recognizing that each platform has its own rules, its own dynamics.
And its own audience, right?
And definitely its own audience. You have to know the terrain.
Okay, so let's talk specifics from the source. TikTok comes up first. It calls it ripe with young minds.
And notes how the algorithm there just thrives on engagement. So the source says content was crafted specifically to provoke, ignite debate, maybe inspire, but designed so clips get shared, debated, turned into memes.
Creating that viral loop we hear about.
Exactly, that rapid loop. And a really critical strategic detail the source points out for TikTok is the use of affiliate links.
Ah, okay. How did that work, according to the source?
Well, they were often embedded within user-generated content. So users themselves were driving traffic through these links to Hustlers University, which later became the real world.
So the goal on TikTok, the source says, was capturing new audiences quickly.
Yeah, through shock and simplicity. That's the frame given.
Okay, shifting gears then. The document describes YouTube very differently. A different beast.
Totally. It's framed as the long game. Requires adapting differently to hold attention for longer. This is where the source says he went deeper into, his philosophy.
Right, things like success, masculinity, freedom, more complex topics.
Exactly. And the source notes the YouTube algorithm rewards watch time loyalty. So it's better for building deeper engagement. The comments section, for instance, used to build community.
And the source mentions that even after bans, the content lived on through fan accounts.
Yeah, it persisted. So the goal on YouTube in this analysis was depth, community building, through that prolonged engagement and what's framed as educational content.
Okay. Moving to X, formerly Twitter. The source sounds like it gets quite dramatic here, an arena for real-time combat.
That's the language used, yeah. Fast-paced. The algorithm favors what's happening now, topicality, virality. And the source says this platform was used for clashing with the zeitgeist.
Engaging with the big cultural debates, you mean?
Right, directly. And public spats, skewering conversations. The source actually describes tweets as moves in a larger game of influence.
Wow. Does it give examples?
It specifically uses the engagement with Greta Thunberg. According to the source, this wasn't just random controversy. It was calculated.
Calculated how?
Designed to demonstrate control, shape the public discussion, basically dominate the conversation.
Right.
So the goal on X, as described, was using that immediate widespread discourse you get from controversy and confrontation.
Got it. The source also mentions Instagram briefly.
Just briefly, yeah. As a place where, quote, his life is the message. More visual, showcasing the fruits of his teachings, as the source puts it.
And Rumble?
Rumble is described as a sanctuary for unfiltered expression, connecting with people who felt censored elsewhere.
So the big takeaway on platform selection, based on this source, it's not just being everywhere, it's choosing the right battlefields and adapting the message.
Exactly. Strategic selection and strategic content adaptation, the source calls it. Sharp, simple, shocking for TikTok maybe, substance for YouTube, immediate confrontation for X. It's about knowing the dynamics.
Okay, that makes sense. So building on that platform strategy, let's talk about the content itself. The source uses another strong metaphor here, artillery.
Yes, content as artillery, transforming pieces into weapons of mass engagement. The tactics described are all about leaving a lasting, indelible mark.
So what kind of artillery does the source identify? Motivational speeches seem key.
Definitely. but described not as, generic platitudes, more like battle cries to escape mediocrity, delivered on platforms like YouTube where you can go deeper.
And the source calls them raw, unfiltered discourses.
Instruments of transformation, pushing hard work, discipline, mental strength. And again, the source notes these spread widely through fan channels, even after being taken down sometimes.
Then there's the controversial stuff. The source calls that a staple.
A staple, particularly on X and TikTok, and framed not just as disruption for its own sake, but as a way to challenge narratives, ignite thought, reaction, even negative reaction.
How does the source differentiate that by platform?
On X, it sees them as provocations, designed to get headlines, spark debates, and crucially, leverage the algorithm through outrage and interaction. On TikTok, more compact, powerful jolts for viewers. The source is clear. Controversy is framed here as a strategic tool.
Right. The source also mentions educational content.
Yes, a critical part of the arsenal, especially via the real world, which evolved from Hustlers University, imparting a philosophy of success but with practical wisdom, tailored for YouTube, financial freedom, personal development, business stuff.
And the lifestyle portrayal, we touched on it with Instagram, but the source brings it up again under content tactics.
Yeah, because it's seen as fundamental to the message, showcasing the Bugattis, the homes, the training. It's all curated, according to the source, to mirror the ethos of Tateism.
So his life is the advertisement, in a way.
The source calls it a living testament to achieving success by breaking from the matrix, a demonstration of tangible outcomes.
Yeah.
Each post, each video is seen as a piece of a narrative showing him as the prime example, the exemplar.
But the core message stays consistent across these tactics: success, freedom, masculinity.
That's what the source emphasizes, yes. The underlying essence remains, even if the delivery changes. The lesson here, according to the document, is this really intricate dance.
Knowing how to say it and where, based on the audience.
Exactly. Deeply understanding who you're talking to, the shock seekers on TikTok, the substance seekers on YouTube, the cultural skirmishers on X. Engagement often comes from perceived authenticity, that raw honesty vibe.
But controversy is highlighted as a major tool.
A formidable tool, yes. It attracts attention, discussion, builds the persona narrative. But the source acknowledges it cuts both ways. It draws fire, attracts major critique.
So the art is knowing when to use which tool.
That's how the source frames it. Discerning when to educate, inspire, or provoke, tailored to the platform's culture, algorithm, user behavior. This content, the source concludes, becomes his legacy, his sphere of influence.
Okay, let's pivot to engagement and virality. The source uses military terms again. Engagement as the front line, virality as the victory parade.
Yeah, and it suggests this is turned into a precise science, not just random luck.
And controversy seems central to the virality part, based on what you said.
Absolutely. The document really digs into how controversy is used strategically for virality. It says engagement, for Tate, wasn't just about metrics. It was about igniting dialogue, galvanizing a movement.
How did that look in practice, according to the source?
On X, it points to direct confrontation, challenges, debates. Each tweet is framed as an invitation to interact, agree, or disagree. Doesn't matter. Creating a cycle where followers feel part of this unfolding story.
And things like live streams or Q&As help build community?
Yes, those tactics plus personal replies are noted for cultivating that community feel.
Okay, back to controversy as a tool for virality. The source calls it a weapon of mass virality.
It does. The analysis is that this comes from understanding algorithms, especially on TikTok and X, feed on engagement. And controversy fuels interaction like almost nothing else.
So ticking on hot topics wasn't accidental.
Described as calculated. Calculated to hit the core of public debate, provoke strong responses from all sides, which guarantees visibility because the algorithm pushes it out.
And the Greta Thunberg example comes up again here in this source.
Yes, specifically as a case study of how controversy can make content go viral much faster and wider than normal promotion. The source is pretty blunt. It says this involves exploiting the fact that even negative engagement is powerful fuel for some algorithms.
Interesting. What else contributes to virality, according to this analysis?
Timing is key. Mastering when to drop content aligning with peak times or trending topics. Also, challenges, like the top G trend on TikTok, that encourage user-generated content.
Which the source says spreads like wildfire.
Right, because people are actively participating, not just watching. And the messaging itself kept simple. Clear, memorable ideas are easier to share, remix, turn into memes.
So virality isn't just reach, it's spreading influence.
That's the distinction the source makes. It mentions tactics like incentivizing shares, rewarding engagement, maybe with exclusive content, encouraging content that demands active participation. This creates a network effect.
Meaning the message spreads through the followers themselves.
Exactly. Through their shares, their debates, their own related content, it propagates outwards.
So the lesson on virality from the source is it's engineered.
Pretty much. Engineered through simplicity, an emotional trigger like outrage or inspiration, and perfect timing. Controversy is pivotal because it sparks engagement, which signals relevance to algorithms, boosting visibility.
But the source adds a caveat about using controversy.
It does. It notes that wielding it requires awareness, maybe responsibility. There's a line between provocative and potentially destructive. Fostering that community interaction is also vital, turning watchers into advocates.
So it all comes down to understanding the audience, the platforms, and human psychology.
Deep understanding of all three, according to the source. The overall approach is described as authenticity cloaked in strategy. Content designed not just to be seen, but felt, shared, debated.
Okay, let's move on to personal branding and image. The source uses armor and weapon metaphors here. Brand as armor, image as weapon.
That's right. Focused on forging an identity that's completely unmistakable.
How does the source say this persona was crafted? Catchphrases seem important.
Very. Phrases like, "What color is your Bugatti?" are described as more than just questions. They're creeds, challenges to normal thinking. They embody the whole philosophy: success, ambition, boldness.
And they stick because they're provocative.
Provocations and rallying cries, yeah. That's the analysis.
And the lifestyle portrayal comes up again, but specifically for branding this time.
Exactly. It's about embodying the success that's being preached, meticulously curated. The source repeats that idea of transforming his life into a living testament, a tangible demonstration of the results you get if you follow the teachings, break from the matrix.
And the top G persona, the source calls that the peak of the branding.
The zenith, yeah.
Yeah.
More than a nickname. An emblem, it says, of ultimate masculinity, leadership, success, symbolizing being at the very top, wealth, mindset, everything.
How did that evolve, according to the source?
Into a cultural phenomenon, a meme, a movement, something followers could aspire to. The source argues that by creating and embodying Top G, he built a mythos, gave his audience a symbol to rally around, to emulate.
Creating a narrative where followers see themselves as potential top Gs?
That's the idea presented, if they follow the path.
So the main lesson on branding from this source is be unmistakable through consistency.
Consistency is huge in this analysis. Message, image, lifestyle, all have to align and embody the brand. Distinguishing yourself, finding that unique voice, using your life to amplify the message, turning experiences into lessons.
But the source includes a warning here, too.
A big one. The danger of being tied so tightly to that public facade. Any slip-up, any controversy becomes intensely personal. It's the dual nature the source talks about.
It can make you an icon, but also bring you down.
Precisely. If public opinion shifts or actions don't match the words, authenticity, the source implies, is crucial to maintain, and the brand ideally needs to evolve with you.
It sounds like it requires a compelling story and lifestyle that people want to follow.
Exactly. And the source notes this brings significant responsibility to yourself, your followers, your legacy. This kind of branding, in the source's view, aims for posterity, being remembered.
Okay, let's talk about handling backlash and criticism. The source describes this as mastering beasts and turning them into stepping stones.
Powerful imagery again, yes. The core idea is transforming adversity into an advantage using specific strategies.
What's the first principle outlined in the source?
It's stark. Show no vulnerability. That's the analysis. Defiance is presented as the strategy against attacks, especially from what the source calls the media or the woke mob.
So don't just defend, counterattack.
Exactly. Use every accusation as a chance to hammer home the core message. That's the approach described.
What about platform bans? How did the source say those were handled?
Not just by moving elsewhere, but by crafting a narrative around it, freedom versus censorship, reframing the ban itself.
The source mentions the BBC encounter as a key example.
A paradigm example, yeah.
Yeah.
The analysis is that instead of defending specifics, he attacked the interviewer's perceived lack of readiness, turning an attempt to besmirch him into a win for himself and his supporters.
And leveraging backlash generally. How does the source explain that strategy?
It boils down to understanding controversy psychology. Every negative headline is framed as an opportunity to clarify, educate his audience, rally supporters who feel he's under attack.
Like with accusations of misogyny.
The source described his approach as engaging in discussions about traditional roles, respect for women, but framed in a way that tries to reframe the whole conversation, essentially dictating the terms of the debate. The source argues this forces critics to inadvertently amplify his message just by engaging with it.
Did the source mention any strategic shifts after backlash?
Yes, adaptation without giving ground, like increasing presence on platforms seen as prioritizing free speech, like Rumble, and using his own experiences with bans to critique mainstream censorship narratives.
So turning the criticism into more content.
Basically, yes. Even the shift from Hustlers University to the real world is analyzed partly as a tactical move, a platform less vulnerable to outside pressure while continuing the teachings.
Does the source suggest any learning from criticism, or is it all combat?
It does mention learning, actually, but more about refining communication, focusing on precision. Backlash, in this view, taught the value of clarity over just shock value.
Trying to ensure controversial statements are understood in context.
Right, as part of a larger philosophy, not just sound bites taken out of context and misinterpreted.
So the overall lesson on criticism, according to the source, it can be an ally.
A valuable ally, yes.
Yeah.
For engagement, visibility, a chance to strengthen your position, clarify. The strategy involves confronting it, using it to educate, even growing the audience via the curiosity controversy generates.
But there's a balance to strike.
A delicate equilibrium, the source notes. Solidifying your base versus alienating potential allies if you're too aggressive, or if the controversy overshadows the message. It implies some introspection is needed as the backlash about the message, the delivery, or something needing reevaluation.
But not necessarily changing core beliefs.
Not fundamentally altering beliefs, the source suggests, but maybe refining communication for broader reach while keeping the edge. Demonstrating resilience is key, transforming critiques into stepping stones, navigating the storm, harnessing the negative energy, converting critics into catalysts.
Turning backlash into breakthroughs, as the source puts it. Okay, let's get into the final major area, monetization. How does the source describe turning influence into income?
It frames influence itself as currency and describes turning that online dominance into a financial empire.
What are the main methods outlined in the source? Courses seem central.
Very central. Hustlers University, then the real world. The analysis is that this wasn't just teaching. It was building a scalable revenue stream tied directly to the core ethos, success, discipline, financial independence.
Providing a blueprint to the lifestyle he promotes.
Exactly. Covering things like crypto, personal branding, monetizing access to his insights. The source notes, thousands were willing to pay for that.
What about merchandise?
Called an astute maneuver. The idea is the brand represents a lifestyle followers want to embody. So, top G, shirts, accessories. They echo the philosophy.
More than just profit.
Yeah. Framed as forging community, creating a visual identity, uniting the audience, turning passive followers into active promoters wearing the brand.
Affiliate marketing is also mentioned.
Yes, using the platform to endorse products that fit the brand, fitness gear, success books, things like that. Earns commissions, but also framed as adding value by recommending things aligned with the self-improvement narrative. Social media becomes a marketplace.
And exclusive content or memberships.
Primarily through the real world, offering unique access to him, deeper insights, a community of like-minded people, framed not just as content, but an experience, an investment in personal growth, monetized through subscriptions or fees.
So the lesson on monetization from the source is build an ecosystem.
An entire ecosystem around the brand, yeah. Using multiple channels, courses, memberships, affiliate deals, merch to convert that influence into income.
Interestingly, the source itself brings up ethics here.
It does. States that ethical considerations must be at the forefront. It's framed as a responsibility that comes with advocating a way of life or ideology.
Challenge being
Ensuring what's sold truly benefits the audience, making it more than just a transaction. Partner selection needs care too, aligning with core values to avoid eroding trust.
So it's another balancing act. Seizing opportunities versus maintaining authenticity.
A delicate equilibrium, yes. The essence of the brand, the philosophy, has to remain intact in this view. True power, the source concludes, comes from the value provided, not just the money made.
Okay, so the source covers the strategies, the tactics, the monetization, but it doesn't stop there. It talks about the double-edged sword, the downsides.
Right. It acknowledges that this level of fame is a burdensome weight and highlights significant pitfalls, the darker side.
What's the first cost mentioned?
Invasion of privacy. Every move, every word under constant scrutiny. Paparazzi, fans, critics. His life in Romania, the source says, became a public spectacle. Legal issues, personal life dissected.
Described as losing the freedom to live without others constantly framing your narrative.
Exactly. An incessant struggle, the source calls it, for message integrity and just personal peace.
What about the mental health impact?
The source highlights the toll, calls the digital world lonely at the top, where criticism can massively outweigh praise. The constant pressure to be on, uphold the image, fight critics. It's described as exhausting.
Battles fought internally, too, not just externally.
Yes. The stress of public life, mistakes amplified. The sheer noise can overwhelm your own thoughts, making it hard to disconnect, find peace. The source suggests it forces a certain kind of resilience just to cope.
And the last major pitfall described, message distortion.
A significant peril, according to the source. Doctrines on masculinity, success, whatever, get cherry-picked. Nuance gets lost online. Short clips become gospel.
And words get weaponized by people who don't get the full context.
Right, leading to accusations of endorsing harmful ideas. This misrepresentation, the source notes, can alienate the very people you might have wanted to reach positively.
So the final lesson from the source on this double-edged sword is about responsibility.
Vast influence comes with vast responsibility. It's not just getting power, but managing it wisely. Fame requires balance, not losing yourself in the persona.
Digital well-being is crucial. Taking breaks.
An imperative, the source called it. Carving out unplugged time to reconnect with your actual self, safeguard mental health from those pressures.
And understanding that fame can be temporary.
Grasping the ephemeral quality, yeah. Today's icon, tomorrow's lesson, teaches humility, the need to keep adapting personally and with the audience.
So it's this constant duality.
Exactly. The capacity to build empires, ignite movements, but always having to defend against the very platform or public sphere that gives you that power. The source's final thought is stark. Wield fame with precision, or it might be your undoing.
So there we have it. We've taken this deep dive into the source material you provided, really systematically looked at the strategic blueprint it lays out.
From that tactical platform use, the calculated content, engineering engagement, forging the brand, handling criticism, right through to monetization.
And we also explored those significant personal costs and risks that the source itself describes, that challenging double-edged sword of digital stardom. It's a really comprehensive look at a highly strategic approach to building and using digital presence, but viewed strictly through the lens of this one specific document.
Absolutely. It's purely an analysis based on the information within that source.
Okay, so based on everything we've just unpacked from this source, here's something for you, the listener, to consider. The document describes in detail how attention, engagement, and especially controversy are strategically deployed, not just to spread a message, but to actively manipulate visibility online, even, according to the source, leveraging algorithms that respond strongly to negative interaction. Think about the content you consume online every day. How often do you see similar tactics at play, maybe without even realizing the deliberate strategic intent behind them, as outlined in this deep dive source?
Thank you for joining us in this episode, diving into the life of Top G Andrew Tate. We hope you've gained valuable insights. Stay tuned for more episodes to come. You can grab our book on Amazon or Gumroad anytime. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, GenZ Creatives. Wishing you an ample dose of pain and suffering like NVIDIA's CEO. See you next time.